We've reviewed the minutes of the previous meeting. I'd like to call for approval on that, adoption.
I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So adopted. Staff and community reports. Do we have any?
None for me.
Old business. Item A, building permit expiration zoning code amendment. That amendment has been written and presented to city legal and reviewed. It's been returned to the mayor. It is going to be pushed in front of the city council for their 2 readings. The code simply states 1203 in our zoning ordinances that states that a building permit is not acted upon in 6 months has the ability to be rescinded. It had no teeth and no descriptions of what that meant. What we have done is we've added language that requires a contractor to put in place 10% of his contracted amount of work. That 10% does not include stored materials or design fees. It has to be work in place. The building inspector has the right to bring notice to the developer if he has not met that requirement in 6 months. If he has not met it in 12 months, his permit will be rescinded. The outstanding issue right now that the council will have to decide is what will be the fee to reinstate that. We have been told by legal counsel that it cannot be a full building permit cost again. It will be somewhere, for example, in the range of $250 to $500, simply to cover the city's cost to do the re-examination. That will go to council and hopefully be addressed soon. We know what the elephant in the room is on that. It's truck stop. We've also been told, and we did not really accept it, that it cannot apply to existing permits. So it would be going forward only. So that's where we stand on that. Commissioners, do you have any comments or concerns? Publicly, Fire Chief?
On the 12-month on the building permit, the International Building Code, International Residential Code operates off of a 105.5 that states 180 days there.
Okay.
I can get you documentation on that if you want to clarify anything on your side.
Travis, I've asked you to contact me and let's look at that before we submit it to the council. Thank you. Further concerns or comments? Okay. Excuse me. Commissioner?
I'm sorry, I was...
All right, yes, go ahead.
My name is Mary Beth Best. I live at 521 Watsonheiser. I just want to make a statement for the record that according to the records that I've seen, and I'd be happy to present to the council, it appears that the RBT building permit has expired twice and is currently expired. So that would be a moot point.
Thank you. And I think we verified that with our building inspector that that is accurate. If you'd like to make a comment on that, Travis, go ahead.
The building permits known as RBT on the, I don't have the numeric, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but all permits on that site have been revoked due to 105.5, the revocation of permit from the 180-day commencement policy.
Okay. With that in hand, Anya, go ahead.
I think that I have a point of clarification. So you said it was going to go before the city council to change?
Yes.
So because this building permit is in the zoning ordinance, a recommendation must be made by the planning commission first before it goes to 2 readings of the city council.
Thank you. You're right, and that's what we intend to do. The planning commission, when we establish the fee, and I'm not sure who needs to do that. I would think it would be elected officials. And if that is included in the document, we will push that forward. All right? Other comments? Yes, Nate.
Couldn't you just make a motion to approve the amendment and let the city council set the fees? That was my understanding from the
That would be my
workshop.
preference.
So you could go ahead and vote on it today and let us set the fee.
You know, we've not distributed to the commissioners for review. Let's do that next meeting. Yes. All right. We will distribute it and approve it and move it on and let the council determine the fee for reinstatement. And with the comments on the expired building permits, it may very well be that the truck stop does fall under that jurisdiction. Okay. All right. Anything else on that? Comprehensive plan discussion with Mr. Wilson and the mayor.
Well, just as background, I've asked Nate Wilson to start the process of getting some sort of general plan. Nate, I would call on you to discuss it. Basically, who we're working with is the foundation of the Architects Institute, AIA, and they seem to be interested. They seem to certainly solve our first round of questions and concerns. So, Nate?
Sure. So as the mayor said, I reached out to a program called Communities by Design, which is a project of the Architects Foundation, which is the foundation wing of the American Institute of Architects. And they, in a preliminary sense, are excited to work with Monteagle and our community members to help us come up with a plan. The mayor has asked me to fill out their application form, which is quite in depth. There are things where I think we'll need to be working very closely with the Planning Commission, and in fact, one of the major things we need to know is the objectives. What is it we are trying to do? Anya and I have talked about it a little bit. I think a base objective might be to satisfy the state law as it pertains to a general plan, but I'm sure that there are things that the community members and probably the Planning Commission have specifically that they would like to see out of this process. So I'm going to be working on this application. What I would like for you folks, if you're willing to do it, is to simply take a vote recommending that we pursue a general plan and asking the mayor and board of aldermen to fund that as necessary. The nice thing about this program is that it is a public service, so they are only asking for their expenses to be reimbursed. There's no fee associated with it. And the nice thing is that those expenses include lodging and food and those types of things, which they recommend that we work with the community to provide them, so that we're not spending money. We're not sending them to McDonald's. We're sending them to one of the local churches to talk to the people in that church about what's important to them in Monteagle. We're not just paying their hotel bill. We're looking at our local establishments and seeing if we can get them to sponsor to have these folks stay there, so that not only does that lower the cost for the town, but it also gives them a better opportunity to understand and learn more about the community. So I'm excited about this, but we do know that planning should originate from the Planning Commission. So I'm asking you all to vote to support this effort and direct the mayor and aldermen to see that it happen.
Nate?
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
The Planning Commission supports this endeavor. The state actually mandates that planning commissions generate what we're talking about as a master plan for growth. So I am offering to Nate and the mayor the services of the Planning Commission on a volunteer basis to help in any way we can, if it means organizational skills, for locating lodging and feeding these people, or if it's helping with the application. Nate, if you'll come to us, I'll look for volunteers on the committee to support that effort.
One other thing that I think the Planning Commission needs to do is to nominate the DAT process requires a local partner to form a steering committee to guide and implement the process. So I'm going to be looking to y'all to help us form that steering committee. No limit or minimum number of members to be included in the committee.
So,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
I move that the Planning Commission vote to pursue the development of a comprehensive plan consistent with state law and request funding from the city of Monteagle to pursue it with the design assistance team of the Architects Foundation and
Thank you,
Communities
Al.
by Design.
Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Discussion on the motion.
Oh, yeah, or Robert rules. Any further discussion on the motion?
Yes, I'd just like some clarification that the city be reimbursed as appropriate or something, so we don't have a carte blanche check.
I guess my motion would be that the city would provide whatever funding it can't get from someone else.
Yeah.
Understood, thank you. Back to
Second, again,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So it's done. Thank you, Nate. Highway residential subdivision discussion. I'm gonna give you an overview of what we did in a workshop. Some of you were in there. We have been approached by Hideaway legal representation that we were in error when we tried to modify their plans. We've sought counsel from our legal representation for the city, and it agrees. However, the commission is not ready to change, as best I can tell. We have been given an amendment that the mayor is going to read and put out as a motion, and at this time, the council is going to vote on that, either up and down. Any comments other than that from the commissioners? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Full disclosure, I met with Mr. Lester and members of his team to try to find a resolution, which I found out tonight was not the main issue. I had negotiated perhaps them being willing to move the Wren's Nest gate farther towards, or closer to McDonald's to alleviate traffic from the residential area. I found out this evening that is not the case. There's more concern about the intersection of Wren's Nest and traffic volume as it meets Highway 41. So all that being said as background, on March 7th, 2023, during our last meeting, we approved the preliminary site plan for the Hideaway at Monteagle with the requirement that the entrance on Wren's Nest Road be emergency use only. Based upon the developer's proposal to move the entrance on Wren's Nest Road closer to McDonald's and the developer's agreement to provide land on the left and right side of Wren's Nest Road to allow for future development, I move to amend our prior action by striking the requirement that the entrance on Wren's Nest Road be emergency use only and approve the preliminary site plan as amended with the second entrance on Wren's Nest Road for public use.
Thank you,
That's my
Mayor.
motion.
Discussions from the commissioners?
Has it been seconded?
You need a second to the motion.
Second to the motion. Second to the motion.
What is the motion?
What he just read.
Okay.
We need a second before we can vote.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Further discussions? Further discussions? Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. Yeah, Tom Kale with the Hideaway Development. I need to point out something. You know, what you guys have tried to do is grant 12 property owners more rights than 80 to future property owners. They won't. You're saying that they can't go to the McDonald's, that all the new people wouldn't be allowed to get directly to the McDonald's and the Sonic, but that the people on the other is. The main thing I also want to point out is, you know, the state constitution, the U.S. Constitution, is pretty clear about property owners' rights. You can't infringe on that, and you are. And it's called what they want to say, and if you read a little Google, it's an economic taking. And you're not supposed to be denying this plan that is completely compliant with R1 and with your subdivision regulations. The state specifically gives you the right to deal with use under zoning. We're not dealing with use because we're not dealing with zoning here. I would hope that you guys would see the the light and see the logic that what you're doing is trampling on the property owner's rights of the Harton family, which they have the right for economic development of their property. I mean, it's not just ownership and use, it is economic development of the property. So, it's my hope, they've worked hard with the mayor. We worked hard in the last couple of weeks to try to figure out if we could shift the entrance. We lost a lot in that plan. So, I mean, that's it's not only a significant cost to move that road because it's steeper, it's going to take more grading, but it's also, we lost the economic benefit of a lot in that plan. So it's my hope that we can avoid a long-term issue that's going to be going on, and see the light and approve this resolution, because it's the right thing to do. The case law is personal beliefs, personal things aren't supposed to get in the way of a decision. Other owners along the road, it's been established, not supposed to play into the decision. Their objections are not a justifiable means to deny the permit, to deny the plat. But like I said, I'd really like us to move forward with this wonderful Class A subdivision that's going to meet all of your standards, and it's going to exceed whatever is out there already in terms of quality. So, thank you.
Thank you. One at a time, please. Recognize both of you one at a time.
Just quickly, talking about citizens' rights and property rights, nobody has denied economic development and economic advancement for this group. The site plan was approved, they can move forward with the development. There was one stipulation on there that was taken into consideration, the concerns of the citizens who live here, not the 82 people who may or may not be coming in and out. So I'm not sure that that's really a valid argument that 12 or 15 citizens are overshadowing 82 lots. That's not a thing. And if we're going to sit up here and argue about who has access to McDonald's, easier access to McDonald's, this is a little bit out of touch. So I'd just like for you all to, on the record and everything, be reminded that the approved subdivision site plan that you guys did 2 weeks ago meets all of the requirements for fire codes and development and everything else. So I'm not sure what the complaint is and what the entertainment is for looking at a new amendment based on they're not happy that they're not being taken into consideration. So.
Thank you. Next.
I would just add, in addition to what Grant said, in terms of property owners' rights, I agree with you 100% that you should tread very lightly when you're talking about imposing on the rights of a property owner to do what he or she wants to do with property. But at the same time, a property owner can't use or develop a property in such a way as to materially diminish the property rights of others. That's a fact. So to say that, the other property owners on Wren's Nest or wherever they may be don't have a say, we have a say.
Thank you.
Law would say opposite.
Next, public comment. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to remind everybody that moving the entrance closer to McDonald's is not what the city's asking for, or not what some of us are asking for. This is an issue because of traffic at our main intersection, our busiest intersection in our town, and we have an opportunity to not make that any worse. It is going to get worse as we grow, but this is an opportunity to make it not as bad. And I think we can all agree that right now we have some intersection problems right there already. So this would just add to the problem. So it's not necessarily moving it closer to McDonald's and making it easier for the residents to go get a hamburger. That's not what this is about. It's about the traffic for everybody that's going to be driving on that road.
Thank you.
If I may.
Further comments? Mayor?
I apologize for that. That was my misunderstanding. I thought the residents were concerned about heavy traffic if the gate was where it was first proposed. If that's not the case, then you'll be dealing with TDOT as they formulate their plans for roundabouts at the 41 junction with Glens Nest Road. So I understand traffic, I understand everything. I was trying to help a situation thinking of the residents. If you're worried about traffic, I think we'll have to wait till TDOT comes in with their roundabouts, or whatever they're proposing. Thank you.
Further comments? Mr. Lay?
Yeah, you mentioned that, or maybe the mayor, that you sought legal advice on the differences, and is there a written legal opinion as to our standing? When I say our standing, meaning the town of Monteagle?
Mr. Lay, the mayor and I had a phone conference with an attorney, and he agreed with the hideaway that we were in violation of the law. He did not put it in writing. We do not have that. We are requesting that in writing. But the mayor and I both had that discussion and heard that. I'm not an expert on Robert's rules, but I think we should probably go ahead and have a vote on this, and there will be further comments after the vote. I'd like to see where it goes. Okay.
Do you want a roll call vote?
I do. So we have a motion, we have a second, and we're going to do a roll call vote with the commissioners.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Richard Black?
I vote against approving the amendment basically on the grounds that I do not have any written documentation or information for the grounds for even applying for the amendment, that I felt the commission was in full authority to do what they did.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Sergeant? Not present. We didn't do a roll call, did we? Sorry. Mr. Brown?
I vote against it.
Mr. Mosley?
Opposed.
Ms. Trahan?
Opposed.
Mr. Rollins?
Opposed.
Mr. Mayor?
4.
Okay. I am for, but the amendment is refuted, and I want to make a comment about it. I'll try to keep it short because I ask everybody else to do the same. As we have said, we sought legal opinion, and we were told that we were in the wrong. We sought the fire marshal's opinion, and through our fire marshal, our fire chief, we were told that we were wrong. Now, the commission represents the community, and we try to do what's best for the community. So what we are proposing is, with this failed vote, is that we ask you to resubmit at a special call meeting, and we're going to ask your attorney to attend and our attorney to attend. And we're going to do a workshop before with attorneys, and we're going to revisit this issue, all right? We need to see and hear in writing and verbally the legal opinions that we're going to vote on. Now, commissioners, I ask you to have any input on my statement that you want. Any support, against, do you agree?
I support what you say we discuss doing. I think we should.
Having said that, that's the direction we're going to move. Thank you.
And one point of clarification.
Go ahead.
On the fire marshal part, I would kind of like to hear from Travis. It seems like from what we were talking about in the workshop that Travis agrees that what was passed last time does meet all of the codes that the fire marshal and the building inspector has to comply with. Is that?
I've recited the International Fire Code, the standards known with the International Fire Code. And I mean, that's where I go For referencing, that's the
And that is
plan.
met by the formally approved site plan. Is that
By the
correct?
means of fire road apparatus, or fire access, yes.
Yes, so I just wanted to make that point clear when you said
Mr.
fire
Lawyer
marshal was
will
against.
be part of that meeting and have his input on that also.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on from that. New business. The laundromat side plan. Tammy Paulson and Archie Chambers. Representative, please step up. I'd like to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Chris Paulson, my wife Tammy Paulson,
Welcome.
our contractor at Allen Land Builders.
Welcome.
Rocky was supposed to be here,
Our
but
engineer, I mean, he
I think
has
three would be enough for
pre-submitted.
Commissioners, have you had a chance to look at the plans and any comments or discussions? Well, I'm going to go to Anya. I apologize, Anya. I'm a little scatterbrained tonight. Any comments from the stage?
I think, so I'm trying to pull up the, so everything's been met in terms of the zoning requirements. I asked the mayor to meet with the utility district to look into extending the sewer since that was of a concern, but I think that's all been resolved from my understanding. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I believe your engineers or someone, your organization met with our utility folks. You're going to do grinder pump and push on up to the sewer, pick up the water line and run that down to your facility. And our engineer is here if there are any questions about utilities or anything, water, sewer.
He had a concern with.
I have two concerns. There's no clarification on the size of the water main down at the bottom of that hill. And the next thing is are we okay with the fire hydrant being up at the top of the hill and the bottom, and the building being at the bottom?
First question, Mr. Wilson, any comments to them on that?
To my knowledge, there's a 2-inch water line going down to the property, so
I need 2 inch into the building.
that's what's down there right now currently.
Would that satisfy that?
So what we're looking at through the meter hole.
That's an old 5/8
Just an
meter
old,
that's in there.
just an old connection.
Okay, Mr. Lawyer, any comments on the fire hydrant location?
No.
Okay.
That's been accreditation.
Okay.
how about the natural gas?
Is there a gas line? No natural gas?
Not aware of that.
Is there? No?
There's gas up at the storage, but I don't see anything down low.
Milton, Tennessee Natural Gas does the gas, the city
Okay.
doesn't do it.
All right.
Commissioners, questions, concerns? Good set plans.
Can we revisit the comments that were made regarding the grounder pump? It appears that you have a grounder pump on site. You're pumping out to that Catherine Street, and then going north, down Catherine Street, and making a connection. I guess the question I would have, Mayor, is probably for you and your team is, are you guys taking ownership of that line on Catherine Street? So if the adjoining property owners want to tap into that line, can they?
Mr. Wilson?
That would be a question that probably we need to discuss as a town, but typically the town would own anything outside the private property. So there'd be a backflow set at the property line, and that line would be sized for that particular set of effluent. And so, at some certain time, folks that wanted to tie on, it would not be feasible if that's the case. So there need to be some consideration on the line size.
Okay. So you've got existing 2-inch and you're taking a 2-inch tap off of it?
No, that's water. For the sewer, the only thing we need to make sure is that they don't tap in before our ejector. You see what I'm saying? If you're gonna have a homeowner tap in before our ejector, before it gets to that, and then we just need to make sure we got the ejector size for more than 1 or 2 houses in there.
Yeah, we probably just need to look at that. That's a little bit more than a 1-sentence response.
Okay.
But
Is that a decision that needs to be made before the site plan is approved or simply before the building permit is issued?
I think it's something that can be worked through. There's not any issues in them tying on that way. So as far as utility, sewer, or water, as long as a 2-inch line is adequate for their needs, any upgrades and what they provide would also need to be, who pays for that, who puts that in, who the town would ultimately take that over. It would have to be put in and installed to specifications for the town, so.
Okay. Further questions or comments from the commissioners?
So, just so I understand, would this be a similar situation where when this is installed, then any of the neighbors where it passes by, then would they be notified so that they would tie in to the sewer?
Are there neighboring properties that?
Self-storage is
not
there
many.
on ours, and I believe there's one lot between
Mostly
us
storage.
and the self-storage, I believe.
It's a residential lot and the house is at the, it is possible, like, they could subdivide their lot at one point and then put a home on the back of their property.
Right.
But right now, that's the whole property and their house is on Winston Avenue.
Right.
Further discussions? Public comments?
I didn't get an answer to my question.
What was the question?
Would, once the sewer's extended and it goes past these properties, would the city then notify them so that they would be able to tie in?
Not unless there's a request for sewer at those locations. And at the time there's requested sewer, then they could tie on.
So my understanding is that by environmental health, by the state, that if the sewer goes, if you have access to the sewer, you have to tie in.
So the neighboring properties, there are no existing sewer taps there now, is that correct?
Right.
I believe the sewer stops at Church Street.
So there would be, again, I'd have to look at a map, but if there's no sewer currently, no parcels that have sewer next to them, then that wouldn't be an issue at this time.
Seems like all those surrounding parcels, their current use is storage facilities, which doesn't require sewer, so. But that could change.
I think the one that's concerning to me is the residential lot. The new sewer line is going to be passing in front of.
Right.
So at any given time, that individual wants to put in a duplex and rent it out. Does he have access to that sewer line? Does he have to?
If he has access to the road, he should have access to the sewer.
I mean, we can put a tap in there for them, a lead, and that's not a problem, but
I think that's some good forward thinking.
I think so too.
just put a lead in there. I mean, it's gonna be an easement you guys are gonna own, correct?
It should be in the right of way, that's correct.
Right in the right of way, so, you guys have all the say on what, if you're gonna call these people or send them letters, it's just, they're all gonna be assessed on the sewer line, correct? Everybody's gonna be assessed on this?
I'm not sure what you mean by everyone.
Well, assessed is, we're gonna pay for it to put it in, who's gonna pay to maintain it?
The town would own it.
Okay.
And so after that, we're talking about the laundromat parcel right now,
Yes.
correct? Yep.
Okay.
And then, so I'm just trying to think through all of with the capacity, you've looked at the capacity for all of that with the sewer, with all the other studies that you've been doing?
For the laundromat?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So if another, say one of the storage facilities gets bought up and they decide to put another use on it and they need to connect, they're having a retail store and they want to have sewer, would it be then they would be responsible for upgrading the sewer line.
So that's where it gets into, it's more than a one-sentence response, in that to some extent, you can plan, but to some extent, sewer pipes won't work if you try to size for 30 years down the road, because they need to have standard velocity, that scouring velocity, and so you can't oversize a pipe. And so there will need to be some thought and a little bit of design and engineering that goes into the force main size from your grinder pump to the manhole at the intersection. So that's why I said it's a little bit more than what we can solve here at a meeting tonight, but it's doable. There's capacity, and as far as sizing goes, we'll need to look at that before the final utility plan is accepted.
And we won't have much waste, it's going to be mostly gray water.
Mr. Lay?
It used to be, if that's a city-maintained force main, any adjoining property owner is charged the sewer rate whether they're hooked on or not.
Really?
Yes.
That's
The
what I said,
ordinance
yes,
requires
assessments.
that. And down there, going down the storage buildings on the left, I built those, and when I built them, I put 2 apartments in down there in the upper part, on the south end, and then just a single bed and bath on the north end. There's a guy here in town named Robert Fluke that used to stay at the Methodist Church in the little motel room things there,
Yeah.
and they tore those down and he became homeless. So I was building those at the time, so I just built him an apartment. He was an elderly World War II veteran that used to come through Monteagle and stay periodically for months at a time. And so he stayed there, and then in the 2-bedroom apartment, I put a septic tank in for all this. So if that's still the same configuration, those people would have to be charged for the sewer, even though they have a septic tank system that is permitted by the state, they still, according to city ordinance, must be charged sewer. Across the road, that building Gary Van Hooser owns, I built that building. It's on city water.
Yeah.
It has a septic tank. But if that line is maintained by the city and is installed, then that building would have to be charged for the sewer rates. And that's how it's always been. The ordinance requires it.
Mr. Wilson, is there a requirement that if sewer is present at your property line that you have to tie in it?
It's a state guideline that you have to tie on if sewer is at your property line, adjacent to or across.
That's in our municipal code as well, Ed.
Even if you have a sewer or septic system that will pass?
That's
Yes.
correct.
I thought so. If you have your adjacent sewer line, you're required to tie into it.
But it would go back to your city ordinances.
Right.
I just looked at this when we were talking about the grinder pumps. And
Yeah.
I believe the way our city ordinance is structured is you are required to tie into it once it has been requested by the town. And so if the town doesn't request it, you bill them for sewer, but they still use their septic. And that's what's common here in Monteagle and most municipalities, is they
So the
continue to
billing is
use their
just to force
septic
them onto
until the
the
septic
system.
fails. And then when the septic fails, they tie into the sewer.
Right.
They will have been charged for the sewer beginning at the time that the sewer is there. But unless we send them official notice requiring them, according to our ordinance, if we choose to do that, then they are required. But if we don't choose to do that, they're not required. They can stay using their septic.
And the reason why that is, the state made that law so that municipalities can fund infrastructure and have a means to support that infrastructure instead of folks just not choosing not to tie on. And so that helps the municipalities have a way to get funds, because that all the rates and the funding and upgrades are paid for through an enterprise fund. And so that's the town's or utilities' only mechanism to support and pay for that infrastructure is through the rates. And so that's why the state instituted that policy.
Thank you.
Am I understanding correctly that the laundromat's proposed sewer system is adequate to serve, to get its effluent up to the public sewer system.
Well, they currently do not have a line from their building to the sewers, to the gravity portion.
The line and grinder pump arrangement they have proposed to construct would serve their property.
That's correct.
And if someone between them and the current end of the sewer wants to hook up later and discharge a lot of effluent, and that requires an upgrade, that would be something that could be designed and dealt with at that point.
That's correct.
And who would be responsible for the grinder pump? That would stay with the property? Okay.
Further comments? Questions, concerns? Motions?
I move that the planning commission approve the site plan submitted
Second.
for the laundromat.
Mr. Black, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Marriott Hotel site plan, Chris Patel. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Chris Patel. I'm with Marriott Hospitality. We're proposing an 85-unit Marriott Hotel at 300 Monteagle Square, located next to Sonic. We have submitted our site plan to Anya, which we relayed to you, the council, so we're seeking approval on that.
Correct. That was a good set of plans. Also, we had an earlier discussion, I think you were present, where we were concerned with the 4-story height, that this was going in front of the BZA or Board of Zoning Appeals. One of those members is Commissioner Black, who informed us that discussion had happened before on a Hampton Inn and passed. We got comments from our fire chief about it. Any concerns, questions, commissioners, that you want to bring up? Anya, go ahead
So
first.
your motion would be subject to approval of the special exceptions by the BZA for a
Correct.
4-story height.
So actually, we're recommending to the BZA.
You're not recommending to the BZA. You're just approving the site plan subject to
BZA.
the special exceptions being approved by the BZA.
Well, I think I would have the same questions we did with the Hampton Inn. Is it not feasible to build a 3-story?
We can't get the key count on the property.
Can't get what?
We couldn't get the key count on the property, so as many rooms as we needed to make the project profitable.
So it's an economic decision you're making to go with to make it feasible? So is this an all or none? You either get 4 floors or nothing?
At some point, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to build a 3-story Marriott and it'd be elected probably in this area to also do one with the key count.
What special considerations are you doing? You recognize that the city does not have a ladder truck.
Yep, well, we understand that, so I'm not sure if most of you are aware, but at Marriott, they have something called their Fire Module 16. It's one of the most exceptional fire life safety programs in the hospitality industry. We're making sure we're doing a blocking plank construction, non-combustible materials, to also help with that. And when we put our application into the BZA, I'll be having documentation for you guys to look over as well.
Travis?
Comments, Travis?
His plan, he is actually, I don't know if it's Mr. Patel, but someone had forwarded us the plan. I'm very aware of the plan. It's a number of pages, a thick packet on their fire protection plan. I have a copy of that on hand, and as I told you in the workshop, you know, and to back up what Mr. Black said, we've approved one of these with a special exception to the BZA. And the fire considerations are there, they're relevant, but I mean, we can overcome that automatic gate agreements with Swanee with the ladder truck. I believe the Swanee fire chief was in and spoke at the last proposal y'all had for the previous.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd.
And I'm not necessarily concerned about your building. That's between you and your insurance company. But I am concerned about the people on the 4th floor that can't get down.
We have, the prototype is built where we have fire exits on both ends of the building, as far as staircases coming from top to bottom. to also kind of help with that, alleviate that.
And I guess my next concern is what do we do with the 5-story, 6-story?
You are not permitted, I mean, so it was included.
We're not
in-
permitted to go above 3.
Well, on the way that it's written legally in the zoning ordinance, a special exception is only granted for 4 stories and not anything higher than that.
Is this height-wise, is this 12-foot ceilings on the first floor and 8 thereafter?
According to, I don't have the plans in front of me, but according to our architect, the bottom floor height is right at 48 feet and 2 inches. The parapet is the only height that exceeds the height restriction, which is over 60 feet.
Travis, what's y'all's capacity? I mean, to get somebody down off of a bill, I mean, how high can you go? Your ladder truck?
The ladder truck, there's consideration taken into that, Richard, for the sizes that you need. And, you know, Swanee at this time has a 100-foot ladder, which is in that exception. As far as Monteagle, like I told you before, highest ladder I have right now is a 24-foot, and that's what we're required to carry on the truck for an engine company.
So you would struggle to get to 3 floors?
Well, yeah, absolutely, for a rescue. You know, that's where the fire escapes and all that stuff comes into, and that's where anticipated growth for this town, you know, as I said before, you know, we're going to have to start thinking about the anticipated growth with the growth that's already proposed upon us. We're going to have to grow with this.
Thank you.
One more question. Mayor, is this a legality issue with the city if the planning commission and the commissioners and the BZA approve this knowing that their protection cannot serve?
I can't answer that question. I'll be happy to consult an attorney. But I will say my personal experience of staying in these facilities, Marriott, Hilton, whoever, those staircases are all cinder block. There's standpipe in those staircases. If you're going to have a ladder, you can only put it at one end of the building or the other. You're not going to have a ladder truck for every room window, obviously. So I think they would be wise to use the staircase quickly, which is illuminated, in my experience, with battery backup lights, reflective exit lights on the doors, plans on every floor. I'm not sure how much, other than firefighting, a ladder truck would be beneficial to the 4th floor. Their alarm systems in the past and everything have been effective enough to evacuate, but I will be happy to check with an attorney as to what's required as far as liability.
Commissioner Rollins.
Mr. Patel, I had asked the question in the workshop to Travis if he had completed static and residual pressure testing in the area where you're going to be building your hotel, and he said yes, but you're going to be forced to do that through the state fire marshal's office at some point in time. And, and typically that's done early in the design.
Yes.
Can you tell us if that's been done on your behalf?
Yes, so our engineer, Micah McDuffie with ASA out of Chattanooga, has done a fire flow test and been in contact with the city of Monteagle's representatives on addressing that issue, and everything looked good on our end.
And if we go in with a 4-story building as planned, you had mentioned a fire apparatus system. I'll just shorten that up as a fire pump. Are we on the same page?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and what kind of gallons per minute are you talking about?
Top of my head, I do not know, but I can get that information provided. One thing is when I submit my application to the BZA for the 4-story variance, I will have attached the Fire Module 16, which is Marriott's life safety plan for everyone to look through. And it's a very detailed report which Marriott requires all franchisees to use in their properties.
Commissioners, if the fire marshal's report, and I think there's some firefighters out here that can probably verify this, but if the fire marshal's report comes back, and I manage somebody with the university, that testing will be sufficient for the water concerns you have on the 4th floor. My concerns for the city is, do we have an adequate enough volume of water that can sustain that?
Sir. Alec, did you have comments?
I was going to see if Anya had anything she, as a result of her review, that we needed to know about this request.
I think that, so you would just be approving the site plan as it is, and then the BZA would be looking further into what we're discussing now.
Correct. I agree with you, there's life safety, I
Or
think,
you
is there.
could, I mean, you have the option to table it until more information is given regarding what the town, I mean, all, what you're talking about, I don't know enough about the water pressure stuff you're discussing. Do you know if the, Mayor Luke, do you know if you applied for a new fire truck with the CDBG grant this past year? Is that coming down the line in any way to get more fire trucks or?
Well, we'd have to look at the cost of the truck. The ladder truck that the chief has outlined could be close to 900,000 to $1.2 million, or who knows, but it's a very expensive piece of equipment.
But
If
that
there are
was-
grants that would cover that,
There
we'll
is, I
certainly
mean, the
take a
community
look.
development block grant would cover that, but I didn't know if you had applied for that this year, or if there was something
No,
else
not
that
this
you
year.
applied for, like the sewer expansion.
Do we need to include that in the USDA proposal?
we could talk about it, sure. The issue that we applied for, as I recall, is our cascade system for oxygen. We need an oxygen supply for those bottles, and that was about a $70,000 price tag. So in addition to, if there's funding for ladder truck, which I understand is more desirable than a bucket truck, I'd be happy to take a look at it, see what the conditions of the grant were.
So to answer your question, I really don't know what to do in this case.
But you had no concerns or questions that
In
were
terms of
not
zoning.
answered about the site plan that was submitted?
Right, in terms of zoning requirements, it met all those requirements. It was only later when I realized it was a 4-story building. And then that's when I called Mr. Patel and informed him that he'd have to file a special exceptions application and have to go through that process. So, I mean, you could wait until the BZA is able to discuss it, and then this could come before the PC that night on May 2nd. So that would give us enough time to get further information if we need, or if we need to ask the Swanee Fire Chief to come and, you know, I don't know what other proof you would need request, or what you're requesting.
My problem is we spent an hour today in the workshop talking about access to a subdivision here, making sure we had access. That was the whole case, making sure we had access, right? Now we know going in, we're not gonna have access. We're not gonna have access to that 4th floor. So I don't know how you clear conscience. I know I voted to approve one before, but is this a franchise or is this
So Marriott Hotels.
Does Marriott own it or is it a franchise?
No, we individually own it. So we're the franchisees.
I mean, before, we got a letter from the fire marshal and a lot of things before we just passed it through. Here again, my problem is the 4th floor. Yes.
So just to, a little bit of history, so back when the Hampton Inn asked for this special exception, the Planning Commission voted to allow 4 stories by special exception by the BZA, and y'all specifically charged the BZA with ensuring that there was adequate fire protection. So as y'all are having this conversation, you may be able to hunt. And those of you who have expertise in the subject, I'd encourage you to come back when we talk about it in the BZA. But my memory is that when y'all delegated that to the BZA's charge is specifically to ensure adequate fire protection.
That's a point I'd like to bring up.
So the only thing in front of us is the site plan.
We have to keep focus on what our responsibilities are, which is zoning and site plans. As I understand it, the BZA is going to be the entity that looks at life safety issues.
I mean, it would look at special exceptions, which would be the special exception for
Right.
having a 4-story building.
Right.
And then they could look at life safety.
One moment. You'll be next. Go ahead, Travis.
The thing that I want to say the most, and this goes with planning and Monteagle and the growth and development, our master plan and everything until we can have 5 ladder trucks, we can have 12 engine companies sitting in Monteagle. but we have to upgrade everything. The utilities, the infrastructure, everything has to be upgraded. I have water supply, because there's a calculation that goes into factor on these buildings for needed fire flows. All of this stuff takes into the considerations for the ISO scores and the ratings that's achieved by this community. So it's not just saying that we have a ladder truck. That's a perfect thing, and we can do a rescue off of a ladder truck, but are we flowing water out of a ladder truck? I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into consideration other than just saying we have to have a ladder truck. This is a full upgrade for this town.
Yes, sir.
My name's Amit Patel. I'm the co-developer on the project. I wanted to add a few comments. One about the number of units. This project has been on the table for a while. Initially, we set out to do a mid-scale development. And then me being a resident of Monteagle and having long-term interest for the city as well, talked to the local business officials and the city officials to make sure we were doing something that was in line with what the city needed and what the need was. So we've changed our project to a higher end development. Everyone thought it was a better economical direction for the city and the county. And there was a need for it. So we increased the unit. We got a higher end flag to come in. Other hotels that are coming in started after. So this project has been going on for a long time. So that's why the extra units. And in terms of utilities, the first thing I approached this project with is water and fire. And I had a good talk with the mayor at the time, and other city engineers had a chance to look at load ratings from identical hotels that we'd shared. And all of that was set to be okay.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Wilson, if I could. We're talking about water supply for firefighting. There's been concern in the Planning Commission about our water capacities to meet the growth that's coming to this community. And in the instance of the Marriott, this is going to be peak demand in the mornings and evenings. Are you comfortable that we have water and wastewater capacities to meet multiple motels in this community?
So we looked at a number of potential or estimated developments at the time. We have current capacity, but obviously at some point as things continue to come in, there's going to be a point where we don't. I would be glad to relook at everything if the town would like to provide a list of known entities or potential developments that are coming in, because that again was last year. But I feel like we had some conservative numbers that we used and considered. You know, I don't have specific developments in mind, but we use conservative numbers around the community that were potential developments, and currently there is water and sewer capacity. However, there certainly comes a time when upgrades will need to happen, and that's not a favorite subject because all of those upgrades need to be paid for by water and sewer rates. And so as infrastructure is upgraded, then those are big ticket items. Mm-hmm. And so the community will have to at some point support those upgrades. But currently, based on what we know, there is current capacity. At some point in the future, obviously there won't be. But again, if the town would like to provide us a list of here are known items, developments that are coming in, we'd be glad to cross-check those and double-check. But based on...
I think in the future we need to sit down and look at some long-term planning here with what's developing here. Thank you.
If it's germane and interesting, I have a letter from Sam Elliott dated June 13th, 2022, addressing this specific issue for the Hampton Inn. If there are specific questions associated with it, I'm happy to read them. I think the summary is, this is Sam, I'm quoting Sam's letter. There's a question of whether the town would have liability for allowing the 4-story without a ladder truck. The answer is no. The Government Tort Liability Act states, Tennessee Code annotated 29-20-201, except as may be otherwise provided in this chapter, all governmental entities shall be immune from suit for any injury which may result from the activities of such governmental entities wherein such governmental entities are engaged in the exercise and discharge of any of their functions, government or proprietary. And then he goes on, he has other
Thank you, that's good.
And he says in summary, the BZA in section 401 of the Monteagle zoning ordinance, building height may be increased as a special exception of this ordinance. Developments that exceed the maximated height shall provide adequate fire suppression in the event that reciprocating fire protection is unavailable. That's the way our code is currently written, and it sounds like he's prepared to provide that information to us.
And that will be provided in BZA in there.
Yep.
Before we had another question?
Yes, I'm Mary Beth, 521 Oxenheiser. I just I've always been an advocate of healthy economic growth in a small town and I just want to go back to the infrastructure point. It's just, overdeveloping before we're ready is all I want to that's all I've ever said from the very beginning from all of this. And to the question that you posed to the engineer, Mr. Wilson, that is the question we have been asking for years and years and years, and I don't think he answered the question. I think the question needs to be answered. I know I was in the last meeting that Mr. Wilson pointed out that the camera study of the sewer lines, I don't know all the technical terms, but I did hear him say it was the worst study that they had ever done. So apparently there are some infrastructure problems in town that affect those of us that are already here. So we're building on top of problems, and I just want to implore you all to look at the infrastructure. I saw the smokehouse fire. I'm not a fireman, but my husband is, and he was there. And there were water problems. There were water pressure problems. There were water issues that affected that fire and the results of that fire. And I just want us to protect ourselves, and please look at the infrastructure issues before we overdevelop.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, is she referring to the I&I, the issues that we are currently addressing?
That's correct. So
we are addressing those.
That is correct.
Okay. I think it's probably the beginning of discussions that we'll be having about long-term growth in this community. And obviously, Mr. Wilson will be a major player in that. Further comments, concerns? Mr. Lay?
It appears to me there's two issues. One that the planning commission should be dealing with, which is, does the site plan meet the regulations, which apparently it does. And the other major concern is safety, which the city council should deal with. And I would say the town of Monteagle gets a motel occupancy tax. If you look at a business in Monteagle, the motels generate more dollars, or well, not just the motels, the ones that are paying the motel occupancy tax are generating more money as far as a customer for the town of Monteagle than any other type business. You get very little gas tax money, and even though there's millions of gallons of fuel sold, it's based on population, not on point of sale. Your local sales tax, same thing. Part of that 50% goes to education on local option, and then we contract some of it to go to the county for education. And really, the motel occupancy tax is the only true thing that we get 100% of. Now, if the city decides they want to, instead of upgrading fire protection with some of those monies and directing those, that they want to buy Christmas lights or whatever they want to buy, that's not, the motel people shouldn't have to bear responsibility for that. That's up to the city council. But you look at I don't know what the motel occupancy tax budget is, but I bet you it's the largest, other than probably sales tax, it's the largest source of revenue that the town of Monteagle has, and it would appear to me that the city fathers would want to accommodate whatever's necessary to take care of that.
Thank you. Comments further? Commissioners? Public?
I have a question. Someone, I think it was Nate, said that the BZA will be considering, or he expects the BZA would be considering the request for approval to build a four-story building by special exception at a May meeting, which would precede our next meeting, scheduled meeting. And if the approval of the special exception by the BZA is a precondition to this plan going forward, no matter what we say.
Right.
Would it make sense to table this and deal with it right after they have a BZA meeting?
So what I was sort of trying to subtly indicate is that it's, according to our zoning ordinance, it does not appear to be the charge of the planning commission to evaluate fire safety issues. That was delegated by the planning commission to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
But with that being said, it's hard for us to vote to approve a four-story building going in when we're not satisfied that we can get water to the fourth floor.
Right. And so you're approving it subject to that conversation. And I said, I would encourage y'all to come to the BZA, particularly those of you who have expertise in the subject, because he's going to be providing us with all that fire safety documentation, because that's the only charge I saw for us within the zoning ordinance. The only charge for the Board of Zoning Appeals is to evaluate adequate fire protection. So
once again, it's focus here. We need to focus on zoning and site plans, and the BZA is regulated to focus on life safety. We're all agreed with that? Any concerns with that statement? And I'm saying it because I want to believe it.
I thought that the BZA was focusing on that strictly because it's being asked to approve that it's super tall building.
the zoning ordinance states that on special exceptions for approval of the building, we are to look at fire safety issues.
Thank you. Mr. Patel.
So one thing I heard was that it could be subject to approval on the water pressure conditions. Well, our engineers have reached out to the city of Monteagle and asked for the levels and the testing and the bearings, and everything looked good before we even moved forward with our site plan.
Understood, you said that, yes.
So I'm not sure why it's a discussion if there's not enough adequate water to be provided to the building. If the tests were done and they were asked, and he was provided with their documentation that he needed to move forward.
Correct.
I think looks great. I was very impressed with it, loved the conference room and all of that. I can see that getting used all the time in town for various things. So I mean, the overall plan, I think it's fantastic.
I agree, it was a good looking floor plan.
Yes, absolutely. And BZA making the decision on, the fire protection, I think that I'm fine with that. My biggest concern is something, Travis, that you brought up, is that we've got adequate sewer and water from when you evaluated it, and that you put some, planning for future growth. But then we've been approving projects and haven't necessarily know exactly which one. So it seems like maybe we need to look at exactly what's been approved and make sure that with what's been approved and where we are with everything, that we do have water sewer capacity before we approve another big something. That's my concern at this point.
Mr. Wilson, I think you did say that you had looked at the capacities both on water and wastewater, and that we were capable of meeting their needs, correct?
That's correct.
Does that include meeting the needs of the Hampton Inn that was already approved?
Yep.
And all the other projects that we've approved since then?
And again, the easiest thing would be provide me with a list. I don't have the study in front of me, but we considered a lot of developments and a lot of fictitious developments.
Right.
You might say that were not even considered, but just land parcels that were empty, that were in certain parts of town that could be a potential without any indication that there were developments, and tried to impose some type of usage for both water and sewer. And so to the extent, what does that mean exactly? Well, the only sure way is to, if the town wants to give me a list, I can run back through that and update that. If that makes you feel comfortable, that's a decision that the town would make.
think that's a necessary decision to make.
When you completed the study, would you say we were at 50% capacity, 80% capacity? Where would you say we were at on domestic water?
You're probably in the 50 to 60%. From what I can remember, I'd have to go back and look, but I can certainly get that number to you.
All right.
Just quickly, Nate, I would hope that maybe the master planning thing that you proposed earlier, that part of that planning process would be identifying some triggers in terms of, okay, when we reach this many buildings or occupancies or something like that, that's a trigger for us to start realizing that we are getting close to capacity on either sewer or water. So I would hope that that's something that's built into this committee, built into the group that's going to be working on that, so we know triggers.
I totally agree. We should include that in the master plan. Yes, sir.
The state and TDEC mandates that anytime that you get to 80% capacity of water or sewer, that they have, the town or utility district have some plans of upgrades. So at that point, the town would be mandated by TDEC. You turn in water and sewer reports on a monthly basis. They see what you're reporting, what uses that you have. And so at the point where you get to 80%, they're going to call on you and ask the town, where are the upgrade plans? So that is something that the state looks at, because there's monthly reports that are turned in for both water and sewer. So that's being observed right now.
Thank you. Anya?
You worked in a town this is not going to be a very popular option, but have you worked in a town that had a temporary moratorium on growth?
Absolutely.
Yep.
That is something SETD staff have talked about a lot in the past year, about Monteagle putting on a temporary moratorium for all new development until a general comprehensive plan has been completed, or maybe a complete water sewer.
That's a good warning shot over our bow, isn't it, that we need to move ahead with this? Simple question. If you had a wish list, would it be additional water or additional wastewater treatment?
That would be determined by the town. I mean, you got to have both. You can't have one without the other.
But what's the most challenged at the moment?
I mean, they're both equal. I mean, I will say that the town has already has a working model for both the water and the sewer. So that's something that we can look at quickly and efficiently. And what I mean quickly, I don't mean like by tomorrow, but it's not going to take a period of months to get responses. So, for example, if the town provided us a list of developments, then within a week or so, we could come back and provide you an update on capacity remaining. And so, because of that working model that we already have built, then we are able to do that. So, I mean, it should be a living piece of information that's updated, especially as development occurs. I will say about self-imposed moratoriums that typically, I'm not telling you not to, but I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just giving you some just general information, is that self-imposed moratoriums are done for a reason, because of serious issues, like you have multiple overflows in a sewer system and you can't handle flow. And so the state at that point would step in and either mandate you have a self-imposed, or they would put you on a consent order. So the town is not at that point. And so I just say that to say that self-imposed moratoriums are there for a purpose, and so I would consider what your purposes are before instituting such a moratorium.
We appreciate your input and your attendance.
That might be a good question for Sam Elliott as well, because maybe we have had issues with the zoning map, and we are going through a pretty hefty process pretty soon for a comprehensive plan, so maybe this could be justifiable to do a moratorium based on that.
Yes, commissioners?
Is water capacity a condition of us approving this?
No.
Has nothing to do with it?
No.
Just an open discussion on issues we face.
So, yeah,
I think we should
back to the
resolve
hotel, you have three options to
I think we should
table it,
resolve the
deny
site
it,
plan
or
and
approve
stay on
it.
subject instead
I do.
of open
Subject to
discussion.
ZBA.
Say again?
Subject to the BZA, you could have, back to the hotel.
You want to make a comment about that, Mayor?
No, I understand the discussion of everything. I know that Mr. Wilson has been working with previous administrations. I was attending some of those meetings from time to time. They did do that. We've discussed with the developers for the Marriott about water supply and infrastructure and the requirements that they're meeting and their cooperation, I think, with a very comprehensive site plan there. If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the site plan for Town Place Suites as presented this evening.
You have a second?
Subject.
Subject to
Are you going to
BZA
add-
approval.
Well, of course, subject to BZA approval.
Wait a second.
I wanted to remind that it should be subject to the BZA special exceptions approval.
Before we vote, so if we approve this tonight, and it goes to BZA, it doesn't come back in front of us?
No, and so if the BZA denies the 4-story, then the site plan is denied, but they would have to resubmit based on,
But the BZA is only gonna look at the 4th story, and nobody's ever gonna look at the water capacity again?
no.
It's not in our responsibility.
The water, I mean, I thought that we had
No, it
discussed
sounds
that the
like-
water capacity, it does, like if it, the water capacity in regards to the hotel, it does have, there is enough water capacity.
There is current capacity for the water and sewer for this development.
Prior to you doing a study on what's already been approved?
Yes.
Can we not ask the developer to make sure he has stamped drawings from the fire marshal's office or a letter indicating that your proposal works within the pressure testing done here in Monteagle for that site?
We can have our engineers provide that as soon as they're complete.
Good part of the submittal to the BZA?
Yes, once he submits those, they're done.
Mhm. So that would be included in your submittal to BZA.
Okay.
So do we have a second on the mayor's motion?
A second. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passes? Richard Black.
I did,
Nay.
You opposed?
I opposed.
Let's do a voice, a roll call vote so we get this clear, all right? So here we go. Richard Black,
Against?
Dan Brown,
Approved.
Alec Mosley,
Approved.
Katie Trahan,
Opposed.
Greg Rollins,
Approved.
Greg Malou,
Approve.
Ed Provo approved. Motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Volunteer Behavior Health Service Site Plan. James Greg Stamps?
Yes. I'm Greg Stamps, I'm the architect working with Volunteer.
Welcome, Mr. Stamps.
We're looking to add 6 bedrooms to the existing facility.
And this facility is just across the street in front of the nursing?
Yes.
Correct.
Second.
All right. Anya?
So there were some questions in my last email to you that I sent on March 27th that I never got a response on. Do you have, did you get that email? It
Yes,
was
I
about the church approving the rear/side.
Yes, so we were requested to send a letter to the Episcopal Church Diocese in Nashville, and we've yet to get a response on that. Our lot is basically on the corner, so we're essentially, it looks to have 2 fronts. We're adding to what we're considering the side, which is a 15-foot setback. Or it could be construed the back, which is 25-foot setback. So we're a little over the 25 and not quite to the 15 yet. So Anya recommended that we possibly get church approval that they would be okay if we used a 15-foot setback.
Is that the vote?
Does that make sense?
No, this is a little Episcopal church sitting there.
Yes, which has a very large piece of property of woods separating the two.
And you've not heard back from the fiscal diocese about that?
No, we have not.
Okay.
The other questions I had were involving parking, because there's not specific regulations regarding this use. So my concern was that if this use changed in the future, then there isn't sufficient parking if there's only 5 spots, and there's, I think you said there's, how many bedrooms total?
So there'll be 10 bedrooms, 12 bedrooms.
Okay.
And the nature of behavioral, volunteer behavioral health is they cater to the alcohol and substance abuse. And it's within their guidelines and restrictions that their clientele do not have automobiles on site. So presently there is 5 parking spaces for the staff, and there is a carport parking that they put the passenger van, they locate it there. And so they do have a passenger van in case the residents need to run errands or they have time periods that they send them on. And they use the passenger van. So that, right now they do not have automobiles on site. If we were required to construct additional parking spaces, they would essentially be sitting empty.
So I don't know if that may require a variance by the BZA. Were you going to say something?
Well, when you're through talking about parking, I have a different question.
Okay. But yeah, so the options are, I'm just trying to understand how we could go for a variance request, because this use isn't defined in the zoning ordinance. So based on the Monteagle zoning ordinance now, rooming boarding houses require 1.5 spaces for each room, while medical facilities and clinics, there should be 4 spaces per doctor plus 1 per employee, and residential uses require 2 spaces per dwelling unit. Of all those that are slightly related to this use, none of them really match what's going on here. There isn't.
And we're not changing the occupancy of the current facility.
Oh, you're not, it's always been 16 persons and you're just,
Well, no, we are adding persons.
okay,
But it's still going to be the same function as it's always been.
okay. But yeah, the occupancy is increasing.
So Anya, you've got site plan and you've reviewed it, and parking is one of the issues. Other issues?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, my question was, I'm looking at this email that you forwarded to us, and you asked if there was going to be a revised site plan for the April 4th Planning Commission meeting, and the answer was yes. And do we have a revised?
That is the one that is included. So there was a site plan that we've been discussing last month. You had revised based on my
Right, that I
revisions.
clarified the landscaping,
And then when
et
I
cetera.
met with my larger group, these are some questions that came up about the side rear, the parking, and then just having a question about where that stormwater catch basin was going to be piping the stormwater.
Well, that's currently existing.
Mhm.
And it's, for all intents and purposes, it is a retention area.
Okay.
And we're taking what little additional impervious surface we're adding and piping it to that area. So we're alleviating any surface drainage.
I think that would suffice for my stormwater question.
So does the revised site plan satisfy your questions other than having to do with parking and setbacks?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then, everything else had been addressed.
Anya, did we ever confirm what we were considering the front and side of the building, front and back of the building?
No, I mean, I agree with the applicant that it could be up to interpretation, but, I mean, that's why, because it's up, you could put it up to interpretation, that's why I thought the setbacks directly affect your neighbor. So if you had a letter proving they were aware and supported that, then I didn't see a huge issue with that.
Mr. Stantz, what are you considering the front of your building?
Second.
I think you're considering
What is that?
the other one to be the front of your building.
Yeah, Second Street.
Not second.
Not
That
second.
was,
Second and the highway
The applicant,
41, isn't it?
yeah. Mr.
Yeah,
Sims is
Highway
considering
41.
41 to be the front,
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
so that he has a 15-foot setback at that side. But the question is, if Second Street is the frontage.
Do you have a 911 number,
911 number.
Or address.
an address?
Oh,
I can pull it up.
it's on the site plan.
Yes.
There was a time the 911 number was the front. I don't know if that's still the case, but
I just wanted to. be
It's
careful about
27 Second
approving
Street.
Something at the front,
So
we change this.
for other purposes, the Second Street is treated as the front.
Yes.
According to the address.
Dean has a question.
Any other questions, concerns?
Dean?
When it was built, Joseph Johnson Mental Health Center dealt with the Bose Conference Center, which is the three dioceses of Tennessee, East, Middle, and West. And they sold the property to them for that, we just refer to it as a group home. And that was about 86 or 87, somewhere in there. Second Avenue was the front of the structure at the time it was approved.
Okay.
And it may have since been changed, but that's the history of how it got there. And Holy Comforter is not holding services now, are they? I've been told that they have not been, and that they're looking at disposing of that property along, just like the Bose Conference Center.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been surveyed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Further discussions or comments, commissioners? Public? I have a motion?
Question, would the motion need to be subject to BZA approval of a variance or a special exception?
I think so, legally it would be required, because we're requesting something outside of what the zoning ordinance provides. But then it gets into the question of if this is a, undue hardship of the property, and that's what
So as far as our approval, it's contingent on passing it to the BZA for approval of the setback, which you're also trying to get the church to approve to, so they don't have to do that. Is that what I understood?
This one is very difficult because it is so up to interpretation.
I think it's the parking, isn't it, that's the big variance?
Right, but also because the renovation's happening at the rear of the 911 address, it's not fitting within the setbacks as well.
Could the parking situation be considered a grandfathered?
Like a non-conforming use, because it was already existing.
Correct.
Even if they change the use, they could continue to be a non-conforming use?
We're not changing
Oh, yeah,
the
they're not
use.
changing
Well,
the
you're
use. They're
enlarging
continuing the use.
We are enlarging
having more
the
people in it.
use, the existing use.
Yeah, that's possible. I think this is another thing that I think legal counsel could help with.
If I may, what is that letter supposed to say, or how does that help this cause?
That the church doesn't have an issue with us using a 15-foot setback. Even though we're not going to the 15, we're basically going to a 20-foot setback. And that's only to optimize a larger new living space for the clients there.
So that would affect the site plan?
If we were to have to move up to the 25-foot setback, then it just takes away from the additional living space we were trying to create.
I was just wondering, between legal opinion and some questions to be answered, and the letter not being here, is it a problem if we table this?
Well, of course, I'm going to say, I wish you wouldn't table it.
Well, I just want to put the pieces together for everyone, but that's why I asked. If you're ready, Anya, to comment, I just thought I would get you some time to get a legal opinion on some of these issues.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Comment from the back.
On the grandfather comment with the parking, if this changes the footprint of that property, that's one of the arguments we have right now with several entities in town. And, you know, and I'm trying to be fair and stern to all of them, that the grandfather word is openly used in this town, and if we're changing the footprint, that gives us liable cause to uphold the current ordinance.
Correct.
I move we table this application until the next scheduled meeting.
And the purpose of tabling is to get a legal opinion and to have Anya do a little more research on this, and also get the church to respond to you about the setback, correct?
The only problem with tabling it is that the way that it's written in your zoning ordinance, that if you table it, the applicant cannot revise his site plan. So if you decide to make any changes legally, you're not supposed to table something, you're either supposed to deny it or the applicant would withdraw and then resubmit for the next meeting.
We can't postpone? I understand tabling. We can't
I
postpone
don't
this?
think postpone is an option in your site plan approval process.
Of course not.
Would you like to withdraw?
And then resubmit for the May meeting. Once
For May?
the next meeting is May 2nd. And this would give you enough time to send me the information of the letter.
Well,
And I
if
could
we,
look further into non-conforming use.
okay, I don't really think the setback is that big of a problem, you know, with the church, et cetera.
I don't know.
I mean, even if it is, we can easily, we can move the building, the addition up, whatever we need, you know, the 5 feet we need to.
That would
But
be best.
now the parking situation is, if we were to have to add parking based on the zoning requirements, then we're building a parking lot that nobody's gonna park in.
Well, I think that's for the BZA to decide. I think you have a legitimate argument about that.
I think I can look into the parking for you because it is a special use. And I think that group homes, group quarters are protected by state law. I just need to look into how. That's why I'd like to have legal counsel help me.
Okay.
And then with.
And that increases the runoff of the site.
Right, I agree. So, and then the other issue is, I don't know, because of setbacks, that the only issue is your neighbor. Because if the neighbor changes one day, that you've already.
Yeah.
So if you're able to change your site plan to fit it within the setbacks, that would be the best process forward.
We have a motion on the table.
Well, I'm not sure, I don't know that it was seconded, so I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you.
So my options are withdraw the site plan,
Or get denied.
or it gets denied,
Right.
and go through BZA in regards to the parking.
I wouldn't say we know yet if it needs to go through BZA. It might be a question of looking into legal and seeing if your use is protected by state law, that you wouldn't have to increase parking. I can look into that for you, but I don't know how the setbacks. I mean, one of my solutions I thought of was maybe getting the church to state approval, but when I'm thinking about it more, if they change ownership, it doesn't make sense.
I'm going to go back to the table concept, because if we do table it, we have to address it at the next meeting.
No, in this
No.
meeting.
If you table it, then he won't be able to change his site plan based on how the language is written in the zoning ordinance. Tabling is only to get more information, but to not change the site plan. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I thought we were getting more information.
And he potentially needs to change the site plan
For moving the setback.
for moving the setbacks.
Comment?
As a building official, I understand where he's going with the unused parking, and I agree with him 100%.
Right.
But all I'm looking at is the all fairness of the ordinance, and I told him the ordinance is for the town.
I'm hoping you find a way to get around that because of the use that he has.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the ideal solution for that.
I can look into it.
If the applicant were willing to revise the site plan to conform to the setback that you said.
Okay,
was-
so we all agree that's going to be a backyard. It can't be construed as side setback. Is that
I don't
right?
see how it can be a side setback.
Even though there's really two fronts, but it does have the address of Second Avenue.
And the entrance is on the front.
Right.
If the applicant were willing to revise, to modify the setback and submit it in time, before our next meeting, then if we were so inclined, we could approve, well, you could perhaps know some way that the parking requirement can be
Yes.
finessed.
Yeah.
And if not, the site plan could be approved subject to BZA permitting.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that, because with variances, it's based on, particular difficulty of the
All right,
property.
well, anyway, you're gonna know more next month than you know now.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I'll know more next week
Okay.
about,
Well, let me say this, as
state
far as scheduling, we're considering a special called meeting. If you can have it within a week, we may be resolving this in April rather than May, if that helps the
It
situation.
could, but it would have to, I need your site plan 14 days ahead of that meeting, whenever that special call is put on.
Well, I mean, that's not a problem. I can move the.
Our notice for
Yes, I'll
special
have to
called
move
meeting
the
is 14
addition.
days,
Yeah.
so it may all meet. We wouldn't be meeting till about the 20th of April.
If I were to have a letter from the diocese, then would that be
I don't
considered?
know, I'm just trying to establish a timeline to help the situation.
The diocese can't waive the setback. and
No,
they might-
you're right.
We might be more,
No, it's basically for their approval that they don't have a problem.
well, if Mr. Lay's right that they're selling the property, then pretty soon there'll be another owner over there that they would hope, I guess, that would have an opinion too.
Yeah, that's the problem with that. I'm trying to find a workaround, and I'm not sure if it's gonna work.
Okay, we'll move the addition.
Resubmit with revised plans?
And
So you
provide a revised plan.
Okay, so you withdraw your
Yeah,
site plan.
I guess we'll withdraw.
And
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
do I have your permission, Mr. Mayor, to reach out to Sam Elliott to request more information on protection for group quarters?
Yes.
C2, C3 zoning district amendment?
So that is in your agenda packet. On page, sorry. It's on the bottom, is listed as 27. And so if you look at that table, we've moved storage, self-storage facilities from C2. We've removed them to place them in C3. And we've also changed it, industrial uses, general warehouses are now permitted in C3, and hazardous and flammable material sales and storage is permitted in C3. And when you look further into that, I've added the letter C, where it says propane tank storage is permitted as special exceptions in C3 district only. No other hazardous and flammable material sales and storage is permitted in the C3 district. And I see a typo, but I can fix that.
Discussion? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Mosley.
Who? Alex made it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Zoning ordinance site plan checklist amendment.
That's on the next page. It is what we've talked about before. I just made two lists. One of them is just basically a checkbox list that I would send to the developer. And for any planner that comes after me to be able to use, to just go down the list and check off if it fits into every single requirement, to make it a little bit more user friendly for both parties.
Thank
And
you.
then the same thing for what's on the next page. It's for review by the building inspector, utilities/engineer, fire chief, and then any additional comments by city hall staff.
And what are you asking us to do with this?
I'm asking y'all to recommend to, so both of these ordinances were recommendations to city council to.
Do we have a motion to do so?
I move we recommend to the city council the adoption of the ordinance, proposed ordinance found on page 30 of our materials with its two attachments.
Second?
Second that.
Dan Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. First, hearing of persons having business, do we have, well,
Thank you.
surprise.
Zoning map.
Yes, sir.
There used to be one here, and I've been told it's been revised, or?
Yeah, well, I just gave them 8 new copies, so.
Okay, and my question is, has it been revised, or did you just duplicate it, or?
I mean, it's been revised after the most recent rezonings on Catherine
Okay.
Avenue.
So the revisions have been based on action taken by the city council on whatever that action
Planning
was.
commission and
So
city.
no other parts of it has been saying, oops, that was wrong, or oops,
No.
we're going to change this. Yeah,
But
okay.
that was a rezoning request.
Okay.
Everything has been done.
And is this something big enough for us, for a citizen to come in and be able to find their property and see?
Yes. And actually, there's an online map that's very easy for you to plug in your address in the Monteagle.
Can't get it.
You can't get what?
I can't get
it. Well, you can get it on your computer.
I don't, about once a
Well, then
month.
you can look at it on my computer if you'd like.
But
and-
if we just had a copy on the wall.
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. Lay, that's a very good
Yeah,
suggestion,
they have
Mr.
plenty
Lay.
of copies. I
Yeah.
gave it to them immediately before this meeting,
Okay.
so.
And it will be posted.
Okay.
Where is the online map available?
It's called, I can give you the website. It's, you have,
Give me a copy of that website also, please.
yes, I can do that.
And the other thing, and I'll be done, is you guys are planning and you've discussed safety issues and water and sewer issues, which are all valid concerns. And I would urge you to consider looking at the feasibility of whether the town of Monteagle needs to be in the water and sewer business. There's a lot of towns the size of Monteagle that are not standalone utilities anymore. They have either combined with others or been bought out by private entities. Back in the last major drought, I don't know what year it was, 12 or 15 years ago, that was a big thing with the state about the town of Monteagle looking at consolidation or sale or whatever because of the size of our utility district, the number of customers. We're a very small system. We don't have the expertise in management, be able to pay the people and the expenses that it takes to plan forward and for instance, to tie in a model of your water and sewer capacities to each person that submits a site plan for a business and say, we want an estimate of utility use. And then you would immediately plug that into your model and then it would reduce accordingly instead of asking, and the 80% thing has been around forever, since I was here in the 80s. And we still run out of water. We still had sewer moratorium. And then the state, we had a consent order and no more hookups on sewer. And then there's a small apartment complex adjacent to Grundy Housing that's not in the city limits, and they go up there and build it. And then the state sends us a letter telling us to hook them on and while we're under moratorium. And so the only thing I could figure that the person that developed that was from Chattanooga, so he must have knew somebody at TDEC because that project got approved. Do you remember that, Debbie? Yeah. So That's how things operate on your utilities. But to cite a comparison, we were in the gas business for 30, 40 years, and it got to the same thing. We didn't have the capability of managing pre-buying gas and paying those fees and all that. And so we sold the gas system. We took bids on it. Middle Tennessee Natural Gas was the high bid. We awarded that system to them. Monteagle had, I think we got $500,000 for it. We got $1 million, yeah, and we had a whole lot of money in reserve, and that money was just gobbled up and spent. But my point is, that turned out to be a great thing for the customer, the town of Monteagle, and Middle Tennessee Gas System. And small businesses are going out of business every day. And the town of Monteagle is a small business compared to lots of other utility systems. And again, it may be that there's a consolidation, merger, or whatever, but as long as I've been here, we've been chasing the water and sewer issue. And that's been over 40 years, and we've never caught it. Debbie's been here probably 35 or 40 of those years. Yeah, 38 of those years. So that's the fact, is it not? Yeah. And so it's been chased, but never, ever have you been close to reaching out and touching it. And I don't think you will be now. And I think it's due to the size of the system and not being able to have the expertise and the timeline and the commitment, whether it's to raise rates to get the job done or dedicate taxes from motel occupancy tax to pay for a fire truck or whatever it is. And if you got a fire truck, you got to have water, like you said. But anyway, I think someone needs to look at that option. Is it time for the town of Monteagle to not be in the water and sewer business? You have more customers outside the city limits than you do inside. Now you have greater consumption inside, but you have, number-wise, you have more customers outside.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, your exit survey idea is still in discussion. Any further discussions? Any further comments from the public? I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?